So I hope everyone is here for how to build teamwork within a volunteer group. Otherwise, you should probably, I mean, you can stay, but if you're not interested in that, it's okay to drop off. So let me share my screen. I'll check that out. All right. Share. All right. Is that sharing the slide deck or are you seeing PowerPoint?
That's a slide deck.
Okay, so it's a slideshow. Yay, we don't have to look the ugly view. All right, so I need to minimize that. All right. Volunteers are passionate. They want to serve the group. Okay, and I can probably read all this, but ultimately, you've got your volunteers. They want to be valued. They want to have purpose. They want to be part of something bigger than themselves. And we want to keep that, all of those things being fulfilled so that they will continue to come back, continue to have enthusiasm, and you can help them grow as people and as active members of the society. All right. It's a kind of weird thing, but the truth of the matter is that what you think motivates people is not what you ultimately think of. What works in the workplace works in volunteer groups. Ultimately, I am a devotee of the whole Daniel Pink drive, intrinsic values, that basically people are motivated by three things: autonomy, mastery, and purpose. That means they want to be the masters of their own fate. They want to get better at whatever it is they're trying to do. And ultimately, they want to feel like they are part of something bigger than themselves. Okay, and getting people to work in a team feeds off that, those intrinsic motivators, but also you need to, as the leader of that volunteer group, approach it with patience. Make sure that you've got a plan, that you have respect for each of those people as an individual. They all come in with skills and experiences different from everyone else. You need to build a sense of community. You have to instill trust. And all of that comes down to very strong communication. All right. Teams develop in what is the Tuckman sequence, which is first there's forming. That's when the team comes together, they agree on their goals, they begin to tackle the tasks. This is kind of like the beginning, the orientation. And then storming, and that's when you start picking up the team starts to sort themselves out, gain each other's trust. But ultimately, this is the stage where if you're going to fail, you're going to fail here. This is where it all comes together. All right. Norming is when you've kind of ironed out all the personal things, all the conflicts. You've kind of agreed how you're going to work together, and there's a sense of team cohesion, and you start to be a unit. And then performing is once everything is normed out, everybody's got their roles, and you can then focus on your common goals. Ultimately, this has been around since the mid-60s. You'll see this a lot in any team working or leadership training you might get in the workplace. All right. And as I like to say, team working agreements, they're not just for agile development teams or Scrum teams. Basically, there is plenty of research that shows that if you have an agreed upon set of how you will interact with each other, how you will resolve conflicts, that these are the groups that fail the least. All right. So your working agreement allows your team to clarify their expectations, what everybody's behavior will be, and it is defined by the team itself. You, as the person leading this team of volunteers, don't go, here's what we're going to do. You're like, all right, how are we going to work with each other? Right? Examples. How are we going to communicate? Are we going to do that on email? Is there going to be a Facebook group? Are we going to build a Slack channel? You have to define what you mean to have something done. If you, as the team leader, have given the action of getting the site reservation, you might think that they need to then have the contract in hand, ready to sign, but the person you gave that group, that activity to, might think that it just means that they need to leave a message. And also, you need to decide where you're going to store all those documents, right? Where are the receipts going to go? Who's going to hold them? Where's the contract going to live? All of that stuff. Those are the kind of examples of things that you would want to put in a working agreement. Also, maybe how often we check in, right? That's another example. All right. And you use this to you're setting expectations now, right? Everybody needs to be on the same page, and how you do that, and some of these things also are part of this agreement, is how the team is going to interact with you as the leader of the team, or the person who's organizing this team, how to interact with the rest of with each other, and how you're going to interact, which is the same way you're going to interact with the team, and when a task is done, which I've already kind of touched on. All right. I'm going to talk about something called servant leadership. And this is where you are not, sitting in a chair and like pointing around and giving people directions. You're part of that team. You're part of the community, where you share the decision powers and you put the needs of the team first. And you, some of these things, some of the steps that are part of this, and this is all from the Greenleaf Center of Servant Leadership, is basically you build a sense of community. It's a holistic approach. You serve the team, and the team shares in the decision making. Hence the whole, maybe event steward's better than autocrat. All right. The illustration, which I'm sure everyone has seen, is the person on the bottom is the servant leader, right? And that's what you, or if you're trying to keep your volunteers coming back, are going to try and work like. All right. Oh, that didn't work, right? All right, this was not supposed to fly in like this. I'm just going to hit all of these and walk through them. All right. If you want to be an effective leader, you kind of have to wear many hats. You're a teacher, you're a mentor, you're a coach, you're a facilitator. We're all aware, we're all familiar with what a teacher is, right? You are the person who has knowledge, and you are handing that information out. You are teaching. You are giving your experience and your expertise and your knowledge directly to that team. Mentors, one, it's a little less formal than a teaching relationship, and it's kind of sharing your advice and trips. You're working to make that team, or each individual in that team, be self-sufficient and help that team kind of run themselves. Coaches, on the other hand, as opposed to a teacher or a mentor, the coach has an expectation that you know what the answer is, and they're just going to help pull that out of you, lead you to the knowledge that you have inside of yourself. And then a facilitator is that person that guides the team, that is fully empowered by themselves, and they just kind of keep everybody on task and pointing and keeping the distractions to a minimum. All right, and if you're going to lead a team, you need to delegate. If you've put together this team of volunteers, you shouldn't be doing it all yourself. And there's the questions that you look at with an effective delegation is what, okay? You're explicit, you're saying, what do we need to do? What is the goal that we're trying to accomplish? When is when it's due, when we should check in, when we'll come back together, who you are actually giving those tasks to, right? And it's not just a matter of who knows how to do it. It's also a matter of whether or not they've got the time to do it, right? You might have a new person who has never, worked on an event. I'm going to keep using events as an example. That's never worked on an event team before, but they're on summer break from college. So they've got all the time in the world to make the phone calls, right? So instead of somebody who's been the autocrat 15 times, or has been an event steward 15 times, but is, on a tight work schedule. When you delegate, you should also let them know why. Why is this task important to us as a team? And the how is not from you. It's from the person you've delegated to, right? Once you've explained the what, the when, the who, and the why, that's their task, you let them do it their way, which means many times you're going to have to be patient and allow them the time to get it right. You can't expect somebody who's not done something before to do it as quickly as you do. And they may have a different way to go about it, so don't hem them in how they achieve it, as long as it's not, illegal or immoral. All right, and what's really important, there are some things called accidental diminishers, right? Don't unintentionally diminish your team, right? Are you an idea person? You're like, hey, I'm going to throw out all these ideas. You're kind of trying to hope you'll, seed the ground and get people to respond. But what usually is the outcome of that is, people shut down. They're like, well, what, I guess you don't need me. So what you often should do in lieu of that is, maybe just say it once. If you've got an idea, don't, pimp it all. Don't be all enthusiastic about it. Give every people a chance to put their input in. There's the person who's always on, like you kind of own the room, which kind of leads to the rest of the people on the team feeling silenced. So, you know, maybe sit back and listen. The rescuer, and I know personally I'm a little bit guilty of that, is that as soon as somebody is, you perceive they're floundering, you want to get in there and help them. You want them to be successful, but in order to be successful, you have to give them the freedom to fail, right? Not blow up the whole project that you're working on, but like give them a task. And if it doesn't quite work out, make sure you've allowed enough time to, you know, let them figure out, you know, give them the opportunity to say, all right, I'm not going to fix this for you. What I'm going to do is ask you, what do you think we should do in this situation? All right. The pace setter, that's that go, 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 go. But you've got people running, trying to keep up with you, but ultimately people get exhausted, right? I'm sure, you know, the pace setter feels like they're giving that sense of urgency, but ultimately they get so far ahead that the team is kind of left in the dust, wondering what decisions are being made. There's confusion, there's delay. And finally, there's the rapid responder, right? You think that, you know, that quick response is going to keep people on task, but ultimately you're the only one talking then, right? It's a little bit more like that always on. That you're, excuse me, you should give other people, you should take a step back, do something like, I'm only going to check my email every 24 hours, right? Give everybody else on the team a chance to respond so that you're not the only voice. All right. And I am going way faster than I thought I was. Ultimately, obviously, when you're in doubt, you need to communicate. You know, reach out at least once a day, just to let people know you're still there and they're available to help them, or for any questions. But ultimately, the thing that builds trust is transparency, and transparency comes from communication. And finally, and this is so important, express your gratitude and your appreciation, even if it's just telling them thank you. If it's the Word Frame Wednesday, right, that they run on Facebook, if it's an award recommendation, whatever it is, you know, make sure that they understand that you appreciate the work that they have contributed to the team. And that is ultimately the end of my slide deck. Does anybody have any questions? Need any explanation, any expounding? I know I kind of burned through that really fast because when I can't see people and can only see the slides, I just talk.
I have a question.
Sure.
So you mentioned communication being the key to building trust, and communicate every day.
Or, you know.
Can you give a context to that? Like, because there are some people who would think communicating every day is kind of hovering, helicoptering.
Maybe, yeah. True. All right. Again, we're back to that whole, whatever touch point that your team has agreed to. Example, sometimes it's just you checking in to see if there is any email or any thread on your Facebook group or your Slack channel or whatever you're using, just to make sure that you're informed that there's not anything out there that hasn't been touched upon. You don't necessarily have to, I guess, to speak, but you need to make sure that the communication is open. How about that?
Thank you.
I have a question. When it's Nastasia, when you're doing the feedback loops, what's the best way if you're getting, oh, I don't have anything new this week or this month or whatever your deadline is, but you know, because you've run this event before or been around this event a lot, you know that stuff it should be getting done, and you don't feel like you're getting any information back from that person without sounding absolutely exasperated with them.
So this is kind of where you add the leading questions, right? It's like, well, in the past, when we've had this event, at this point, this, and this are done. All right. So, do we have whoever has that task, when do you think you're going to have that done? Is there any way I can help you, or can someone else help you as something come up? You kind of, you don't do the accusation of, why isn't this done? And it's like, in the past, you kind of give that level set, you reach an understanding, right? Here's what we have done in the past. And, if you have a different understanding, please share it with us, because, we just want to make sure that this doesn't fall off anybody's radar.
Okay. What about
because sometimes people get thrown back on their heels, right?
Yeah.
You're like, so it should never come across, or you should endeavor, I shouldn't say should never, you should endeavor to make it not confrontational, right? You kind of share your, you kind of want to get that it's okay to share, because quite often feedback feels like a threat. All right. So you're giving them safety, right? This is the safe space. What I do in real life is I'm a Scrum Master. So when we do that feedback, which is part of the retro, which is, here's our safe space. We understand that everybody's trying as best they can. If you're having a problem, please share it with the team so that we can help you.
Okay. I just know sometimes my voice comes off as rather exasperated, and I'm currently reading that set of books for work, and I'm like, well, how do I make that work? So
yeah, it's hard. I get that, but some of the techniques, here's some of the one word technique steps, right? One, you normalize, okay? It's okay to feel, right? It's okay. And then you say, then you reinterpret, which is you read it back to them. You reflect back what their problem is to them. And then you seek that other person's view. And then help reorder the way things are concerning them. It then becomes, you're trying to lower defensiveness when you are making this a win-win, right? There's no winner, there's no loser in any of these conversations. You're trying to set up a conversation that has no losers.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
No problem. And I'm always available, right? If you're finding you're working in a group and you're, I'm I'll get to that. Thanks. I'll get that question next. If you find that you're in a situation where you're working in a group and you're feeling like you're coming across as exasperated, feel free to reach out to me and I will see if I can help give you like a set of questions, maybe to help like ratchet down expectation, the defensiveness.
Okay, cool.
All right.
Thank you.
Question is there a difference between handling a new SCA member and a long-term SCA member? Yes and no. A new person, you can never assume that somebody knows nothing, right? They're going to have their own set of experiences that are not going to be SCA specific, in the same way that your long-term SCA member is going to have a lot of time in grade and their own viewpoint on how things work. All right. Ultimately, this is when that team working agreement, that contract that you have made between the team, how we're going to treat each other, how this is going to work. And yes, Your Excellency, I understand that you've been in the SCA for 30 years, but not everybody on the team has your expertise and your experiences. So we're going to try and come up with a system that works collaboratively and by consensus on how we're going to treat each other, how we're going to communicate with each other, and how we're going to build our community to get this work done. Ultimately, and the thing is, it's not a matter of new people and old people. It's everybody's going to be different, and we all know plenty of longtime SCA people who, were around when dirt was new and the rocks were so soft, and they have a certain set way of doing things. But there's also people who've been in it just as long who are willing to do anything new and be flexible. And approach it like a new person. So I think it is a matter of understanding your audience and knowing what is going to de-escalate somebody who's had a bad experience. Maybe with a long-term SCA person, you might have some insight or some experience knowing a similar situation. You're like, okay, I understand that you see that this is an issue because we're doing it this way. Let me share. Would it be okay if I share with you times that it's done it a different way? Does that help? Does that answer your question? Because ultimately we don't want to kill the enthusiasm, right? We want volunteers to come back. And I know all of us have been in groups long enough that there's like a power group that are the people that are reliable, right? That volunteer again and again and again and again. Some of them have a feeling that, if I don't do it, nobody will. But at the same time, you don't want to curb, you want to help, you want to set up a situation or an experience that makes people want to do this again, right? It's not the unpaid part-time job, right? It's the this is how when we go to events at other people's groups, we want to give that experience to other people.
Can you go ahead and discuss some conflict resolution techniques that you might have as a team leader when you have conflicts between two team members?
Sure. To between the team members, sure. So, you want to make sure that everybody involved in this, when you're trying to resolve this conflict, has the time to deal with it right now, right? Is it okay for us to deal with this now? Or is there a time that is more conducive for everybody so that we can have a conversation? And that way you can align, you know, because nobody wants to just feel like they've been ambushed. So, and then kind of give everybody a chance to, you know, align your objectives, right? What is it? What's the problem we are trying to solve? Because, and once we've all agreed that we're working on the same problem and we're trying to solve the same, solve the same issue, that's when give each person a chance to express their perspective. And then maybe you as the facilitator can then reflect back to the people involved. This is what I'm hearing. Kind of make sure that everybody is all experiencing the same thing and hearing the same issue. And then that's your opportunity for you as the facilitator and the mentor and the coach to then share your perspective, right? And say, and give that and tie that back and kind of get solicit some feedback from that. And then say, okay, how can we move forward from here? What can we do? And kind of like, you're empowering them to come up with, you're not telling them this is what we're going to do. You're empowering them to come up with the solution and the actions that we need to happen for this to be resolved. Does that make sense? Or am I just?
No, that makes a lot of sense. Thank you.
All right, next question. All right, how do these dynamics differ between long-term teams, i.e. kingdom officers, basically, and short-term teams like volunteers for teams for Odette? And what's the best strategy for those longer-term and shorter-term teams to collaborate where needed? Again, let's see. They should work exactly the same. It's just your Tuckman stages. You're going to be your norming, your forming, storming, and norming are going to happen about the same. You might have to accelerate them some with a short-term goal, but the point where you're performing, everybody knows their role, everybody is feeling like they're part of a team, that's going to last longer. The downside is if you're in a, like, let's say Curia, every time there's a new kingdom officer comes in, you're going to have to start the process again, because while the majority of the team has like a way they work together, that new person's personality may need to be, you may need to change how you work based on that. And so you're going to have to go through at least an abbreviated forming, storming, norming to get back to the point that everybody is still kind of cruising at their optimum speed. What makes it kind of their daily smooth sailing. And what are the best strategies for longer term or I think that depends on the activity, right? I think I still highly recommend that you fall back on some sort of working agreement contract. You know, we as a group working on this project agree to treat each, you know, to communicate in this way, to store our documents in the same place, to check in at this much at this particular time, to re-rack the schedule as necessary. You know, whatever the team agrees are the steps that will keep this team working. And you should always revisit it. If you're on a long-term project or you're in a team like Curia, then you should revisit that working agreement. Is this still working for us? Is there something we need to change? Because something has happened, like COVID-19 has happened. What do we as a team, as Kingdom officers, for example, need to do to continue doing the business of the Kingdom, knowing that no one can see each other in person, as an example? Anything else?
Can you give us a team building game example that we might want to do for a group that, relatively speaking, doesn't know each other well and needs help in forming, storming, and norming?
Let's see. Unfortunately, I don't have my thing. There's a really fun one that I'm a big fan of using Legos. I have a lot of Lego activities we do. Not least of which is, all right, you got 10 minutes to build a statue, figure, whatever it is that, you know, expresses how you feel about the project, right? Or the really cool one is you get one of those 3-in-1 Lego sets and you give the bricks to like one part of the team, and then the other team picks one of those creations and then comes in without a picture and explains to the team what they need to build with those bricks, kind of to work on your communication, right? So you come back and check it intermittently to say, all right, you know, so you get the team trying to figure out, it's like, it's a race car. Have at it, right? And then you come back and it's like, oh, I forgot to tell you that there's stacks on the back, all right? And you go back and come back in. Another like board game that is good for communication is Spyfall. We use that a lot because that gives you have to ask questions, smart questions without, you know, because ultimately you're trying to like figure out who knows stuff without giving away to the spy what's happening. And like I said, unfortunately, if I was on my work laptop, I've got like a whole list, right, in my retro activities. Three Little Pigs is good. Basically, what we have that's kind of like made out of straw, which is basically that which is completely, you know, is barely holding itself together. Then there's the stuff that we're working on, the things that we have that are made out of twigs, which means that they'll do, but they're not super sturdy and aren't going to last. And then things that are made out of brick, right? The things that we think are working perfectly. Yeah, I see what Antonio is saying, that they did a science with marshmallows, candy, straws, and toothpicks. They do it now with spaghetti, marshmallows, and I forget what the last thing is. We have to build something with like just uncooked spaghetti and marshmallows, and how tall you can make it.
We had to build a bridge the last time we did one of those with spaghettis, marshmallows, pencils. That was it.
Yeah, in high school, we had to build a bridge with popsicle sticks and Elmer's glue and nothing else.
It's like, guys, really?
Yeah, but it is so important to build trust in the team. You need to, because we all have what is basically impression management, which is, you know, how you want people to see you. You want to feel like, you want people to perceive you as competent and trustworthy. And in a lot of ways, you just kind of sit down and just let stuff, right? That's because it's a threat to speak up, to share your feedback. And so you've got to create a safe space or a safe experience for people to then contribute. You know, you have to acknowledge, you know, you have to, as a leader, be vulnerable, right? You have to share, you have to say, you know, I could be wrong, right? Here's my experience, but I am not infallible. You know, if you have another idea, please share it, because your experiences are different than mine, right? I'm not always going to be right. So, you know, you need to make sure that you keep an open dialogue, right? When you say, you know, what's your knowledge, you know, what's your knowledge and background, you know, when you ask that person in your team that, you then need to be able to share, you know, what your experience is, right? Or I think in a little bit more vulnerable thing is, you know, if I'm asking you about your obstacles, I need to share what I'm dealing, what obstacles are standing in my way, what's blocking me from being involved. Or, you know, you can't just be this perfect leader, right? You have to be human and be able to share that. You need to also not just expect your team to put a chink in their image management. You have to do it too. You have to be open and vulnerable and being willing to share, if you expect anybody to do it back. I don't know if that was meaningful. So does anybody else have anything that they want to share? Any issue they've come up with that maybe some of this would keep your team engaged? Otherwise, I'll give you, here's what I say at work all the time. I'll give you 11 minutes back. But I think you still, I would have to check with Andreas, but I think you get the whole hour on your transcript. All right, well, I hope that this helps you with your volunteer projects here in the SCA, that maybe it gets you people coming back, being, wow, this was a great experience. I'd like to do this again. Yes, I was hot and ran myself like ragged and did 20,000 steps in a day, but I'm willing to do it again. Because, you know, we made it a fun experience, that we made it a meaningful experience. It made them feel like they were part of the group. Because ultimately, that's what we're trying to do, is make sure our volunteers feel like they're part of the SCA, like they're your group, your local group, your kingdom, the society.
Thank you.
No problem. All right. Well, thank you, everybody. And if you need anything, please reach out to me. I will help any way I can.